my friends, my name is Lindsay. I run the blog Books for Christian Girls, and welcome back to the little corner of the internet where I talk mainly about Christian fiction. Somehow another month has gone by in 2025, so that means it's time to do a wrap-up. So we are going to talk about all the books I read in August. For my little fun stats that I love to share at the beginning of each of these videos, I read 24 books and then I had an additional 3 DNFs. 1 was Christian fiction and 2 were clean fiction. I got 15 of those books off of Kindle Unlimited, and then all 3 of the DNFs were also off of KU. I got 6 books off of my physical TBR, so that's always very exciting. 1 was a reread. I had 5 books plus I DNF 2 off of my priority list for the year that I've been sharing with y'all about. I have 22 books to go. I am getting there. I'm almost there. And then I also got 10 books off of my summer TBR. As always, I'm going to start with Christian fiction and then we'll move into clean fiction. DNFs first, lowest rating to highest rating to hopefully end this video off on a good note. And then I always have my full content reviews of all of the books I discuss in the description below with the titles, the author's name, and the links to those content reviews. So if you need any more information about the book, it is available in the description. Let's get started with Christian fiction, and we're actually going to start off with a DNF, which is such an unfortunate DNF, but that is Rise of the Y by Angela D. Shelton. This is supposed to be Christian fiction, YA dystopian, one of my all-time favorite genres, and I was looking forward to this one, but I ended up DNFing it about 58% through, like about halfway through, which usually I would just push through and continue on anyway, so I can count it towards my reading challenge, but I knew the more I was reading it, the more it was going to get a lower rating for me, and I really just didn't want to spend any more time with it. This is the new cover of it, and it's about 17-year-old Leslea and being a dystopian book. Once she turns 18, she graduates school, she is assigned by the government a job and a mate. And in this society, the more children you have to repopulate their community, the better the rewards are for the parents. And it had a lot of, because of all that, it had a lot of like sexual undertones to me, and it was very awkward. And just like the whole couples being forced to have children concept, I don't personally think that's how it's going to be in a dystopian setting, especially when like they have all this science and like they don't eat real food. They've got these glorified protein bars, that's everything you need. And you know, all the science and like perfection of that, I don't think in a dystopian society there is going to be like the traditional route of having children. Maybe that's just me, but I don't think so. And I've seen this before in dystopian books, and especially in a couple Christian fiction ones, and I just don't like it. It adds in a sexual undertone, and while it obviously there's not details about it, there is a lot about it. And this is not a thick book by any mean, and I only read half of it, and it was like a lot of the plot. It was a lot of the plot. It just adds in some tension and suggestive comments, and I just don't really care for that. So I decided to DNF this one, and I will not be continuing the series. Another book that was honestly a miss for me, but I did finish it at least, was Quest of the Dragon's Princess by Lee Watts. I gave this one 2.5 stars. I went into this book with higher expectations, and then the writing style was interesting. It was a narrator perspective, and he's constantly breaking the fourth wall, so it felt very quirky, and I can deal with a little quirky, but it was just honestly too quirky for my taste, because the narrator will like, he's explaining stuff, but he's also ranting about this or venting about this, and like making comments, like modern day comments, even though this book is set in a kind of medieval-ish time period. It was interesting. Basically, the concept of this book is we follow Princess Samantha, and she has not found her one true love, so she decides she's going to go off on a magical quest alone to go find her true love. And then, of course, her dragon follows her, and then also a knight comes to help as well. And the knight is under this other prince from another kingdom's kind of his, what's the word? I can't think of the word, but like he's under him basically. And so he's supposed to keep Samantha, you know, protected for his prince. And of course, things don't go as planned. There's orgs and giants and lots of different kind of magical kind of creatures. There is magic in this book. I think honestly though, this was really just not my cup of tea. It was hard to figure out ratings for this book because there was some like comments and parts I didn't love, because like there's a really creepy man that very much leers over the main girl, Samantha, Princess Samantha, and makes her wear a very revealing dress that she's very uncomfortable in. And obviously, like, yeah, this guy's like a gross pig. We don't like him. But I still didn't really enjoy that, reading that, and it would make me recommend it for older ages. And I don't know, I was going into this book expecting it to be more of a middle grade story, and it was definitely more upper YA. There's quite a bit of killing and violence and just, I don't know, it was very quirky. There is a mosquito in here. This is going to drive me crazy the entire time I'm filming, isn't it? As I was saying though, I just don't think this book was for me. I have a lot of friends who've really enjoyed it, and I can understand why, but I don't know, it just wasn't my cup of tea. I think had it been in an audiobook format, it might have been more enjoyable, but reading it and the narrator breaking the fourth wall and all the little Easter egg moments and then kind of the venting or ranting just kind of took me out of the story because of the time period it was supposed to be set in, but the narrator is obviously supposed to be modern day-esque. And yeah, it just wasn't my thing, unfortunately. Another book on the fantasy YA side would be Sky of Seven Colors by Rachelle Nelson. I'm actually going to read the flap real quick and make sure I don't give y'all spoilers. I don't know how to explain this book. I just tried 3 times and I feel like this feels like I don't know, like a dream when you have a high fever or something. I'm not sure how to explain this. Basically, Meg lives in our normal world, so it starts contemporary, and her best friend ends up getting hurt and put into a coma. Doesn't look good, and she whispers out in the woods that she's willing to do anything for helping him. Kind of like a prayer, kind of not. And here comes these kind of odd beings, and they say they can help. They can't help her, but their king can. So they try to whisk her off to their world, which is completely devoid of color, to be their king's bride. Did that make a lick of sense? I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but yeah, that's kind of how this book felt. It was kind of all over the place. Again, I start a review with, that was interesting. And I see, I've received comments in the past about whenever Lindsay says a book is interesting, that means she doesn't like it. That's not true, y'all. It's just like, I don't know what to make of it. Like, sometimes interesting is good, and it's like, wow. Other times, most of the time, interesting in my world just means exactly that. It was not what I was expecting. It was interesting. Can't say I loved it, but it was interesting. I don't know. But yeah, this book was definitely interesting. I think a lot of the beginning of the book, and like it is Portal Fantasy, and Portal Fantasy as a usual norm for me gives me like a 404 error code, because it just, what do you mean you just walked in between trees and now you're like in a whole nother world? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, that is so fantasy to my brain. It just doesn't make sense. So I tried really hard to just like go along with it. And I think, honestly, I was going to give it maybe a 3.5, but I really was disappointed by the ending because I wanted more of the ending. I had way more questions than answers by the end of the book, and I don't love it when a book does that. I felt kind of gypped by the ending, really, because like I had been reading once we get to the other world, I had been reading in anticipation to get to the end where I thought something was going to happen, and it does happen, but then the book ends. And I had so many questions. Like, I was way more invested, obviously, in the contemporary setting, which I don't think that's shocking. It was very interesting. There I am with that word again. It was just different. I think the whole, like, colorless world is a very interesting concept. So, like, I was fascinated by that. But a lot of the people, not even really people, they're just kind of, like, odd, giant-like beings. I don't know. They, were not the greatest, and then there was other ones that were just straight up bad, And everybody kind of had so selfish motivations for dealing with her, and I didn't love that. As far as Christian content, you could argue and say there was like some very light, indirect references to God, but unless you're looking for it specifically, I don't know if you would really pick it up. I would personally call it more clean fiction than Christian fiction, but I did do a full content review on BFCG because it's published by Enclave, and I never know going into their books if they are going to have like an allegory, are they going to have light Christian faith content, or are they going to have none? I never know, so I just like review them like I do a normal BFCG book. Oh, the mosquito's back. Where's my lavender? Let me open a bottle of lavender and see if I can get them to leave me alone for filming. The lavender doesn't kill the mosquito, but it repels them. So I already have like 3 new bites from being outside 2 minutes yesterday. Turkey. If I start yawning during this video, it's because I just put lavender essential oil on, and then I'm doomed. So fun times here. As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by the mosquito, after I finished this book for like the next day, I really just kind of had the feeling of like, what was the point of this book? Like, what was the lesson? What was the moral thing to learn from this book? And it really didn't have one. It had more so about maybe just the entertainment of reading about this other fantasy world and the main girl's struggles. But like, I can't even say like there was like character development. She becomes stronger, which was good, but like there wasn't really a point. And I've read books like that, and it's just like, you know, purely for entertainment reasons, and that's totally fine, but it really stood out to me about that in this book that there wasn't that. So I don't know if I'm making any sense. The mosquito is messing with my brain right now. But yeah, unfortunately this book just really wasn't for me. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great in my opinion. I can see why I have friends who really enjoyed it. But the ending really kind of like sucked the life out of it for me because I wanted way more information about that. And I didn't get that. So I guess that's also part of my dissatisfaction with the plot, I guess. Another book I read, this is like more so I would say Catholic YA fiction than Christian fiction. And I personally gave this one 3 stars. It is A Summer to Treasure by Leslea Wahl. This follows 3 siblings. I'm trying to think, what were their names? Luke, Celia, and Austin. And they're all like upper high school to, I think Austin was like, oh, how old was he? About 12, 13? Oh, I don't think we ever got their ages actually now that I say that. But anyway, they're all kind of in the same-ish age range. And their summer has been disrupted when their parents tell them they're going to go on a road trip to different like national parks and different tourist destinations across the US with their grandma, because she did something very similar when she was a little girl and she wants to do it with them now. And so they're not very thrilled about that, but they go along because they have to. And so like all the other books by this author, there is kind of a mystery thread. There's a little bit of a history thread as well. And the main 3 end up trying to help their grandma kind of find something, so it kind of becomes a treasure hunt plotline. And I really like treasure hunt plotlines, so I was looking forward to this one. I will say this one had the most Catholic faith content, and as someone who is not Catholic, all those parts were kind of lost on me. But just as a note, if you are Catholic, you might really enjoy this one because it talks about like the different prayers and the saints and all of those elements. I do have to note that this book actually took me longer than a book of this size, because like it wasn't even, it was 305 pages. So I should have been able to get through that pretty fast, but it actually took me longer to read it. And I think it was because like the 3 siblings bicker a lot, and it's very much like the grass is greener on the other side, because like they each have a moment where they think one of their other siblings is their parent's favorite, and like they could never have gotten away with what that sibling just did. Like all 3 of them have that moment with each other. And it was kind of uncomfortable to read about their bickering, because I don't know if y'all have like ever been, you probably have been, at a friend's house and like your friend and their sibling argues and you're just like standing there in the middle just kind of like, what do I do? This is awkward. Mom, come pick me up. It was kind of that. It was a little bit of that, and I didn't really care for that. And of course, they get better, and there's character growth and lessons learned, and they quit bickering. So lessons are learned, and that is very important, and I appreciate that. It just took it a while to get there, and I wish it would have happened sooner, because then they could have, you know, had more like sibling bonding moments, which makes me sound like a mom or a team builder. I don't know which, but it would have been nice, but it was still decent. I still liked it overall. My next book would be The Women of Wynton's by Donna and Mumma. This was on my priority list along with the Sky of Seven Colors book, so there's 2 of those that are done. And okay, I gave this one 3 stars. I just finished the second book in the series yesterday, so my brain is a little like befuddled, if you will, because of the differences of the 2 and like trying to keep them straight. So I gave this one 3 stars. I liked the second book better, and I definitely compared the second book the entire time reading to this first book. And this one was interesting because it's a 1950s, what do they say? A classy 1950s mystery. Classy because of the setting, but not because of the characters, because some of these women are catty as all get out. And so it's a murder mystery. Basically, we follow 4 women. Audrey is the Mr. Wynton, the department store, his kind of like secretary, and like she keeps the store running, and like she's great. There's a lot of people that don't like her, but they think she's like uppity and hoity-toity and all of that. Personally, she was my favorite character. Maybe that's my marketing degree talking, but I loved seeing how she like put together the sales and like just all the behind the scenes of the department store that she was involved in. I really enjoyed that part a lot. But because of her background, a lot of people make snide comments and gossip about her and just like call her awful things, and that's including from one of these characters. But then we have Mary Jo, and Mary Jo is a housewife and mom, but after her husband was injured in an accident and lost his arms, she is now having to become the breadwinner of the family, so she is working at the department store. And then we have Vivian, who is the bridal store owner that is at the department store, and like she does the wedding gowns and helps the girls plan their weddings. Like it's a very big to-do, and she's one of the main characters. And then we have Gigi, and Gigi drove me up the wall because she has the chip on her shoulder the size of Montana. And basically she's working at the cafeteria. She wants to go up in the department store. She and another side character kind of, they made this book feel so catty because of all their comments, particularly about Audrey, and just all their gossiping and rumors, and they just felt so catty. I was getting flashbacks to high school, which was not a good feeling. I literally like cringed every time I had to get to one of her chapters because they each have their own chapter with their own little header and their picture, which is very cute. The vibes of this book was very fun. But basically, there is an attempted murder on the main guy, Mr. Wynton, and we don't get his perspective at all. I think that would have been interesting to see his perspective now that I think about it. But we see how they are all connected to him in the department store. And after different things happen and a few different murders also happen in the department store, the 4 of them form a very unlikely friendship and try to solve the murders. And you know, it was interesting. There I go again. I gave it 3 stars. I think I had really, really high hopes going into this book because, like, you know, the 1950s, classy, the styles, the clothing, like, it's all just so fun to read about, to research, and all of that. But those catty women just kind of ruined the book for me, and their comments, and I just, like, my blood pressure, I feel like spiked every time. My eye twitched. Something happened every time Gigi, or what was her name, Sissy appeared, Cissy, and they were just terrible. They were terrible. They were a big reason why I dropped my rating. I'm really struggling to like explain my thoughts on this book. I liked elements of it and I wanted to give it a higher rating. I had high expectations going into it, even though I was leery with having to follow 4 POV characters that were all women. It actually ended up not being that big of a deal. They have very different like backstories and tones of their chapters, so it worked. And it tells you like whose chapter is which. But that kind of thing, so that worked out well. It's just kind of, I don't know, they were a very unlikely friend group, and I will say the second book is better in that regard. Like, I can see them more as a friend group, and like, the events in this book have bonded them to each other, so it worked better in the second book. But this first book, it was a little rough. I think because of, again, the gossip and the rumors and just the ugliness to Audrey and just in general, but mainly to her. And then the writing style is a little jumpy, so you don't really know like how much time has passed since this prior event. You don't really know it. You're just kind of going with it. That was one thing I noticed with both of the books in the series. It was different. I liked parts of it. I think I'm going to keep my copy. I'm honestly not sure though. I will say though, this book had very, very, very minimal Christian faith content. It was very light. There was just like a comment here and a comment there and a couple other places. There really wasn't any faith discussions. The second book has a few more comments and prayers, but it's still really, really light, which I was expecting more personally. I don't know if that was because they had 4 main characters and we had all their backstories, and then we have like the mystery and the murders and like trying to figure that all out. So the Christian faith content just kind of got booted out of the way because of the plot line. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know, but it kind of felt like that in both this book and the sequel. I do want to give a note though that this book and the sequel both have a lot of like racial comments and observations because it is set in the South in 1950s America. So like it makes sense and that's part of history, but if you're sensitive to that, that might be hard to read about. I have all the details in my review, but it's like a lot of like colored comments and then like things that are for white people only, and obviously that's a part of history, but it's still hard to read about, especially in the 1950s where there was some changes but not a tremendous amount, so it kind of just feels dissatisfying, I guess, in that. Like I want to see, I guess, progress would be that, and that's not for that time period yet that this book is set in. So I don't know really how to word that, but I do want to give a heads up that it does include a lot of that. And like the cover does not tell you that, the back cover does not tell you that, but it's a big part of the book. And like side characters experiencing it and all of that. So I want to give a heads up. But I hope I was okay explaining it and being sensitive enough, I hope. My next book is another fantasy book, and that is Gift of the Tiding Bearer by Grace Soto. This was on my priority list. This is actually a Christian fiction allegory book though. And I'm really not an allegory person, so I gave it 3 stars. I think honestly that is probably the highest I will ever give an allegory book, because I just have to think so much with allegory books and look for like the hidden messages and uncover certain events and like, you know, see the symbolism. So honestly, 3 stars is a very solid rating for an allegory book for me, even though that probably doesn't seem like a high rating to a lot of people. To me, for an allegory, that is a high rating. And so, if you like allegories, you'll probably really like this one. I think the author compared it in her review that she set out to write an allegorical fantasy fashioned after Pilgrim's Progress and Narnia. And I haven't read either of those. I know, my homeschooler card is being revoked as we speak. It personally, though, reminded me of Hind's Feet and Hind Places, because that's kind of the main allegory I grew up reading, and it was the children's edition, not the official edition. But this one was really interesting because we have a young man who has grown up as a slave, horribly mistreated, and thanks to certain situations and circumstances, he gets to escape that. And he meets a woman who is a tiding bearer who tells him about the path of life and to follow the path, and, you know, you can see where that goes. And then we also have a young woman who, she's kind of called a princess, but really she's like an heiress and like just dissatisfied with life, and she ends up meeting this woman and hearing about the path of life and to follow the path, and they both receive a gift. And then there is this scholar guy who is very arrogant and has a good not just the slice of humble pie, he gets the whole pie eventually. And so certain things happened and he becomes disgraced. But he meets the same woman, gotta stick to the path, and they are all given from her this special like rock stone thing. And it's an allegory, I don't really want to tell you more than that. It's a very unlikely group as well. But they are on a mission to get to this one mountain peak. And it was very, here I go again, it was very interesting. I'm sorry I keep using that word. It was unique though, it definitely had the allegory parts. I'm just like, I'm not an allegory person, I think. I just really am not. So I'm glad going into this book I didn't know that it was an allegory, because I think I probably would have avoided reading it. But I'm glad I read it. It was a solid allegory book. It didn't have really my usual challenges of following with allegory because it was very like clear cut, straightforward. I think I actually would continue on with the rest of the series, but they're not on Kindle Unlimited, so I don't know when that will happen. It's not really a super high priority for me. It had a very unique setting though, because it kind of felt medieval-ish, but not. But yeah, definitely not. I don't know, it was a very unique setting. I enjoyed it. I think I would have preferred to have more of like the cultural details, because I was kind of lost on those. Like maybe I was missing like a prequel novella that explained about like all the different places in this kingdom and like what these people are known for, what they are known for, and like the little aspects of that, because you kind of had to collect and gather information as you read. And personally, when it comes to a fantasy book, I want to be told things up front. But that's just like a personal little reading habit and taste, I guess. I do think you could actually just read this book as a standalone, but like there is still more lingering out there, but it ends in a very satisfying way. So like it's not a cliffhanger by any stretch of the imagination. I may continue on. I'm curious because of the next book's back cover sounds a little interesting. But honestly, it was good. If you like allegorical books, you might check it out and see if you would enjoy it. I enjoyed it overall. Yeah, for an allegory book, it was pretty good. Okay, my dear friends, I just realized one of my Christian fiction books is actually a Christian nonfiction book, and I put it in the wrong category because I never have a Christian nonfiction category. Hi, I'm Lindsay. It just doesn't happen. But I did read and review one, and that is Earth's Epic Start by Costi and Christyne Hinn. This is a kind of... oh, what age group would you say? I feel like 8 to 12 would probably get the most out of it personally, but this is a Bible study that covers Genesis 1, 2, and 3, and I thought it was very interesting. I enjoyed reading different parts about it. I think homeschool families would probably really enjoy it. I enjoyed getting a deep dive in Genesis 1 through 3. In this book, it reminded me of a lot of Bible studies I did when I was in elementary school being homeschooled, and I think it would work really well for homeschooling families, but I think you could also like expand it with like activities and crafts and whatnot for a Sunday school if you are creative in that way. And I would just though give the note that this is definitely going to be more for those who already have a general understanding of Genesis and the events in Genesis with like creation and the fall. It's not one that you would just hand to someone who hasn't learned about that. Like you want at least a little bit of a background into biblical knowledge, I guess I would say. But overall, I enjoyed it. Okay, sorry, water break. So the next book I have is Katie Sue Heading West. And this is by Eleanor Clark. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is part of the series I've been reviewing one a month of. This has honestly been really cute. It is Christian fiction, historical middle grade. It starts off with the prologue of a grandmother telling one of her granddaughters kind of like a family story and like the lesson. So I'm trying to think, what was the character trait learning in this one? Trusting and relying on God no matter what's going on. And so she's telling her granddaughter this story, and then the main part of the book is this historical girl's story. And so this is following Katie Sue, and her family, as you can probably guess, is heading west. And so this is set in 1851, and Katie Sue is not excited about moving away from everything she knows, including her best friend. But this has just been a really solid series. It reminds me a lot of the American Girl books, but having Christian faith content. And oftentimes when you hear about the American Girl books, you compare them in the Christian sense to the Sisters in Time series. And personally, I was not a fan of the Sisters in Time series. I am really enjoying the Eleanor series, and just how the faith content's been worked in and the historical details. It's been really neat. You can tell it's family history, and I think that's neat to read about personally. So I am enjoying that there is an emphasis on Christian morals and lessons and having a good attitude, which I think it should be very standard for middle grade books, and it is unfortunately not so much anymore these days. So this series has been really fun, very delightful, really. Switching genres completely, we have a suspense book, and that is Final Approach by Lynette Eason. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is the fourth and final book in the Lake City Heroes series. I really liked the first book. The second book was good. The third book was okay. This one, though, I would say is probably my second favorite. It follows Christine, and she is an air marshal, and so we have this big friend group of all the prior couples plus another couple from a companion novella that I haven't read, but they are all finally going on a vacation, and everyone's so excited until their plane gets hijacked. Yeah, so not a great way to start the trip or the vacation. And so our main girl is an air marshal. The main guy is an FBI special agent. And so obviously they get roped in and different things are connected. Honestly, I felt bad for the plane hijacker guy for multiple reasons, and like you find out what's going on in his life and like what's happening, of course. But I also felt really bad because like you're gonna hijack the plane that's got like 4 FBI agents, the air marshal, you've got a PA that's probably also packing, like they all are, like a fire chief, like all of the people in this book, like I think one person has like a non-first responder job. Everyone else is a first responder, most likely packing. Like that was a bad plane to pick. I'm just saying. Like, am I allowed to joke about that on YouTube, or am I gonna get flagged? I don't know. But I thought that was honestly, like, that was poor luck on his part. But there was reasons for things happening, and unfortunately I saw who the bad guy was. I was very, like, yeah, I can figure that out, and I did, so that was a bit of a bummer. As far as the romance, this series has been really interesting because you've got the first book, Double Take, and that's kind of where all of the following couples meet. And so you see like their first meetings in that book, and then it's been like a year or something like that since then in this last book. And so like they've been around each other, but like we don't really get to see a lot of their romance in that regard, like the beginning part of it. So it was definitely a slow burn romance, I think you would call that. Christine and Andrew both had a lot of like backstories and trauma, and they kept calling it baggage, and they didn't really think they could be with someone because of said baggage. And so I kind of just wanted to like lock them in a room so they could talk, because they needed to talk a lot. And so, you know, there is that part. I honestly don't feel like I have a lot of thoughts on this book. Overall, I liked the book well enough. I gave it 3.5 stars. Definitely not a new favorite by this author, and neither is the series. I would still say the first book is my favorite book of the series, and I don't know, some parts I really liked, but other parts kind of fell flat to me. I don't know, I liked the friend group. I just wish I had read them closer together and like didn't have to wait for them to release, and I think I would have enjoyed it more and seen like, you know, all the connections, because once you jump into a book, it's been a year since you've read the prior book in the series, it takes like a good 25 to 33%, let's say, to remember the backstories and like, oh yeah, this couple is connected this way, this couple is over here, they did this, that kind of thing. So yeah, I guess now that all the books are out, you could see about binge reading them if you were an older teen who has read and enjoyed other suspense books, but it was good. Overall, I guess I enjoyed it. So switching back to middle grade for a book, I have Jack and the Red Giant by Amanda Clary Eastep, and I enjoyed this one. This is book 6 in the Tree Street Kids series. Some of them have mystery elements, some don't really, but I gave this one 3.5 stars. This series has been so cute. I was really disappointed by how short it is compared to the rest. It's like 140 or so pages, and all the other ones were closer to 200. So when I received it in the mail, I went, where's the rest of it? But it actually ended really well. I have enjoyed the series so much. It's currently undecided if there will be more books in the series. So I personally hope there will be, because I think this is such a good friend group. We follow Jack, who's like 10, 11 years old, and he has a younger sister named Midge. And in the very first book, Jack versus the Tornado, his family is moving from the country to kind of the suburbs of Chicago. And this is set in 1995, so it has a very like nostalgic childhood charm to it. And they aren't all carrying around iPads. They have walkie-talkies or whatnot, and I just love that difference as well. And so they make friends in the neighborhood, and they become the Tree Street Kids, and there's just so many different elements of it that I've just really enjoyed. I have said before, this series is very nostalgic to me in some way, and very delightful because it's just fun. There is humor. I love Midge. His younger sister is just so fun. I would adore babysitting all of these kids, I'm not gonna lie, because they would just like keep me on my toes, but like in such a fun way. Like I wouldn't I wouldn't have to be like on my toes because they're gonna like run out the front door kind of thing. I would have to be on my toes because I don't know what they're gonna say next kind of thing, and I love that about these kids. It's been a really cute series. This one is actually set around Christmas, and I would suggest reading them in order, so if you want to read this one at Christmas time, definitely start the series now if you haven't already so you can be caught up. But throughout the series, Jack and the rest of the Tree Street kids has to deal with Buzz, who is kind of the neighborhood bully, and certain things are happening. The back cover doesn't really say this next part that I was going to tell y'all, so I'm not going to tell you, but things happen with the neighborhood bully Buzz, and it's a really good ending. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to give spoilers. But it was a really good series. I hope there will be more books in this series because they've just been so much fun. But at the same time, if this was the final book, it is a really good final book too. Another book I gave 3.5 stars is Caught in a Trap by Beth Adams. This is book 12 in the Mysteries of the Cobble Hill Farm series. This series entirely follows Harriet, who is about 35 years old. She's a vet, and like, you know, a vet that works with animals, not a vet as in like military, animal vet. And she has inherited her grandfather's practice in Yorkshire, England, and so she has been living there the entire series and just trying to fit in and make friends and all of that. And this one has to do, this was an interesting mystery because she's baffled to receive a phone call from the police asking her to help a lobster in distress. And I'm going to be honest, the whole lobster thing, did not care about that at all. But there is a side plot happening, a side part of this book that is happening and ends where I was giggly and happy. That's all I can say for spoilers. It's book 12. They do reference prior events in the other books of the series, so I would say to read them in order because it's building off of each other, and usually like prior book series I've read by guideposts, so like Secrets of the Blue Hill Library, Mysteries of Mary's Bookshop, those two you can read them in any order and it's fine. But this series has really like built off of each other, so it would be best to read them in order. They are all available on Kindle Unlimited, which is what I've been reading on a month, and I've really been enjoying them. But I'm very excited to see what happens next because of events in this book. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. This next book I get to discuss is also a guidepost mystery series, and I'm going to tell you why I'm tickled here in a minute about it. But this is book 3 in the Mysteries of Blackberry Valley series, and this one was by Elizabeth Penney. I gave it 4 stars. I've really been enjoying this series so far. I haven't bought copies of it yet, but I definitely plan to, because this follows Hannah and it's set in Kentucky, and she grew up in Blackberry Valley, but then she moved to LA to become a chef, and she has recently come back to Blackberry Valley to open her own restaurant, and so it is about that, and just like, you know, normal restaurant behind the scenes things. It's like a farm to table kind of restaurant that is in a refurbished old historical firehouse, and so it's a really neat concept there. But then she also gets involved in non-murder cozy mysteries. This is book 3, and in this 3rd book, there is a Blackberry Festival happening in the town, and this was actually set in August, so it was perfect. I read it in August. I was just like, wow, I love when this happens. And so Hannah is really excited about it, and there's going to be like a chef's cook-off competition thing, but then her friend is having like a prowler on her farm and trying to hunt down for like these old onion seeds that have been like rumored to be amazing. And as a gardener, I found the whole seed concept and the gardening and the farming, I found all that interesting. But really what stole the show in this book for me, I had a lot of fun with this one, and let me tell you why. Because Hannah, for the chef's cooking competition, is going to make blackberry pizza. Yes. And so I am picturing, like for the half of the book, let's say, I am picturing that she's going to put blackberries on pizza, like crust, tomato sauce, mozzarella, basil, blackberries, and then she was adding some other cheese, and I have no idea what the cheese is because I'm vegan and I don't do, you know, that. But that, I'm picturing that, and I'm like, that actually sounds delightful. And then we find out halfway through the book, when she goes to make it, that she's actually doing the crust, you know, the dough, and then she's mashing blackberries to make the sauce, putting like a couple of different types of cheeses, basil, and then pulling it out of the oven, adding more blackberries. And to me, that's not pizza. If it doesn't have tomato sauce, I question if it's pizza or not. But let me tell y'all something. I had a hankering for blackberry pizza, okay? Like the tomato sauce, basil, cheese, basil, blackberries on top cooked. And so I read this book on a Friday and Saturday. And Friday night is our family's pizza night. And so, unfortunately, I had already done the grocery shopping for the week and I had no blackberries. Pitiful. And so I had been dreaming about it for a whole week. And I got to do the blackberry pizza. And it actually is delicious, I have to say. Like, the blackberries we had were very mild, but they added just like a slightly sweet tart note to the pizza. It was very good. I did it twice. I'm already looking forward to doing it again on Friday night because this is going to be a new norm for me. And yes, in case anyone's wondering, I do put fresh green beans on my pizza as well. Yes, and it's a plant-based mozzarella, so like, you know, it's already a healthy based pizza, let's be honest. But I posted on my personal Bookstagram book reviews by Lindsay. And so if you ever want like behind the scenes, like what is Lindsay reading, what are her random talks of the week, that is the account that will have all that, because that's kind of like become like my, not my photo dump place, but like on my stories, I'm kind of random on book related things. And so I did a poll asking y'all if y'all would eat it. And more of y'all said yes, you would try blackberry pizza. And some of y'all wanted more of like what Hannah actually made. And then other ones were like, no, Lindsay, that's horrible. But it actually is really good, have to say. I was suspicious, but I thought it was really good. So that was the highlight of the book for me. This entire book, I am craving blackberries like I have never craved them before. And then I finally get to do the blackberry pizza, and I did it 2 nights in a row because it was really good. My mom did it on her pizza too, and she's like, this actually is pretty good, Lindsay. Yeah, it's very mild and sweet, but it's good. And I'm like, yeah, so then blackberries were on sale, and I bought like 7 containers the next shopping trip, so you know, fun times. So yeah, moral of this book, blackberry pizza. And it's very good. That's the moral of this book, 4 stars. And on another cozy mystery note, we have Mistletoe and Mayhem by Janice Thompson. This book just released on September 1st, but I had an advanced reader copy. I have my physical copy, but it's not here yet. My pre-order has not arrived yet, which is a bummer for this video, but that's okay. I will be getting it, and it was a really good story. It's more a light mystery, like the mystery is more of a background, but this is book 3 in the Little Red Truck mystery series, and I have to say I'm really sad that the series is over because this has been so fun, very humorous, very Texas small town charm, and just like faith-filled characters, and just all the things I really like about Janice Thompson's writing was very much in the series, but particularly in this last book, because our main girl is Erynn, and she is planning her wedding, and it's a couple days after Christmas, and it was really good. There were so many emotions of this book, because like they're also dealing with a wildfire near their property, and so there is like all the concern and fear about that. But then you also have Erynn, like, she's going to be moving out of the only home she's ever known that she grew up in to go get married. And, like, you know, appreciating and noticing all the changes in her life. So it was very bittersweet for her. And I say for the reader because it's the last book in the series. But it was really good. The mystery does take a back seat to the rest of the plot, but I was personally okay with that because it felt like a Miss Janice wedding book, and it reminded me, this whole series, of the Brides with Style series by her, but also the Weddings by Bella series, which I actually didn't realize I haven't reviewed those on BFCG, so I'm going to see about reading those maybe next year and get them reviewed. But this was just a really fun series, very Texas charm that I just love, and yes, it was really good. I can't tell you too much more about the plot because it's book 3. I would suggest reading them in order. You don't really have to, I guess, but I think you would enjoy it the most if you read them in order, and there are references to the prior events and the prior books, so I would suggest reading them in order if you can. For Christian fiction, I have 2 more books. The last one's a reread. That is a top favorite of mine, but I want to introduce to y'all a new favorite of mine, and that is Riley and Sam, Riley plus Sam. I don't know which way we actually say it. I'm going to say and, but that's by Ashley Schaller, and this book released in August, and I enjoyed it so much. I instantly bought a copy. I wish I had bought in the hardback though, because it's apparently like fancy and special, but this one is still fun because there's hearts on the page edge, which is neat. But this follows Riley, and how do I want to tell y'all about this? So Riley is an artist. She's in high school, and a couple years prior, her best friend Sam, who lived across the street, was discovered on YouTube singing and has become a celebrity. And so it's been a couple years since they've seen each other and haven't been able to keep in touch. And suddenly one day he appears, but there's kind of a scandal / controversy happening. And so he has to hide out. And so it is up to her and also her 12-year-old cousin, who is a hoot and a half. Lulu is fantastic, to give him a summer that will be a positive remembrance of the summer. And this was just fun. I don't usually love the whole celebrity love interest trope. I can take it or leave it, but it worked so well with this book, and all of the details of it. This felt so summer, so Christian YA, contemporary YA. It was just so good. It reminded me a lot, writing style-wise, of Sketchy Behavior by Erynn Mangum, and if you know me, you know that's the highest compliment I can give, basically. It just had such a cute humor to it, and then it's told in first person of Riley, so it was fun. It was so much fun. This is actually available in Kindle Unlimited, and so I highlighted a bunch of parts that I just greatly enjoyed and literally laughed out loud at, particularly because Riley's 12-year-old cousin Lulu, she steals the show. She is so entertaining and so humorous. I love her little quips, and she adds a lot of charm to the plot. But I also really liked Sam and Riley together, and just how they were able to pick up and be friends just again, and just it was good. It was really good. Honestly though, y'all, this was pure enjoyment. This is going to definitely be a new recommendation that I will be talking about often. It's definitely great for summer, but I think you could read it anytime. It very much was summer feelings with backyard camping and s'mores and riding the bikes and going to the beach and all of that. It was definitely summer. But I would suggest reading it anytime because it was so good. I also want to give a note. This is going to be a spoiler for a video when I do the if you like this, read this kind of thing. I want to do another one of those coming up, but I have to give that now. For this book, if you really like the Starstruck Disney Channel movie, yeah, but not because the main guy's not arrogant at all. That's the difference. They are childhood best friends to more, which I love that trope. But then add in that starstruck kind of hiding from the rabid fangirls and just trying to keep a low profile, but still have really cute moments as well. Yeah, this was good. I honestly want to see about getting a hardback as well. I would love to tab my copy, but I don't want to interfere with the cute hearts on the page edge, so I'm not quite sure how to do that. But anyway, I just really enjoyed this book. The Friends to More, the childhood best Friends to More is just even more of my cup of tea. The summer setting, and then just so many parts. I wish the ending had gone just a little bit longer because I want to be greedy and I would have loved more, but it was still just so much fun. And there's a little picture of the two of them and the dog every time, and I'm really looking forward to rereading this book because I might do that in the summer. I really might, because yes, this was perfect for summer. So much fun. 4.5 stars. Definitely a new favorite. And then my final book for Christian fiction is a reread that I gave, again, 4.5 5 stars, and that is Katie in Waiting by Erynn Mangum. I've decided to read this trilogy because I loved this trilogy so much when I first read them, when they were first released. More years ago than I think it was. 2015. It's been 10 years. I've always said this was my favorite series by Erynn Mangum. I don't know. I'm going to keep rereading them and find out this trilogy, but I do really love the Paige Adler trilogy. So I don't know which one really will be my top favorite, but this was still just so great to read. And so in this book, we follow Katie, who has spent her whole life waiting for the right guy. And I really love this trilogy though, because each of the books does not really end with a romance. There's a possible romance, a potential romance, but it is not like a typical Christian fiction romance book where the couple ends and it's happily ever after, you know? It's not like that. And I love how realistic it is because she is in her early 30s and just the whole being content and waiting on the Lord. I love the message of this series so much. And it's just, it's such a good trilogy. It really is. So I'm looking forward to rereading them. If you have not read an Erynn Mangum book, you might check out this series. Moving on into clean fiction books, I've got 10 and then 2 DNFs, where I'll start with the DNFs, and I'm going to try to run through these faster because I feel like I'm just talking y'all's ear off. So the first DNF would be Spun of Gold by Jen, I don't know how to pronounce the second name, Johnson. And this is a clean fiction fairy tale retelling, but set in a Regency time period, and it's Rumpelstiltskin. And I only got like 19 pages into this book, and then I was like, you know, I don't like what I'm seeing coming down the tracks, and so I skipped the end, which I never do, but I'm so glad I did, because I value what little sanity I have left, and I know I would not have been happy with like spending an hour or 2 hours on this book with that ending. I would not have been happy about that, so I'm very glad I DNF'd this one. It does have to do with a married couple, so there is some content things I put in my review, but like I didn't read the whole book, so it's just like what I read and then what I caught at the end, and then I searched for some certain keywords. So yeah, I had an inkling where this was going, and I was not wrong. Let me put it that way. I was not wrong on my inkling. And I'm glad I stopped reading it because it was not going to be my cup of tea. Another book I DNF'd was Oceans of Sand by Jessica Flory. I actually only DNF'd this one at like 15 pages in. This is a clean fiction fantasy book, but I've actually attempted to read this one before, and I think it's just ultimately not my kind of fantasy book. It's just not my thing. I'm not big into like desert settings and all of that, and I just had a hard time getting into it, so I decided ultimately I'm going to DNF this one. Moving on into books I did finish, I read For Letter or For Worse by Esther Hatch, and I ended up giving this one 2 stars, unfortunately. This was just kind of like a short story novella that was about a letter that never should have gotten mailed, accidentally getting mailed, and personally I think that's a great trope. I don't know, maybe that's not a trope, but I sure enjoy it. The letter writer does not enjoy it when that happens, but I enjoy it because of like all the drama it brings. The problem with this book for me though was it was more sexual content than I personally prefer, because there was like a lot of like emotional kissing and sexual tension between the main couple, which it made sense in a way, but at the same time I was just like, hold your horses, you two, like goodness me. And so I think though that's become pretty on par for this author's writing style for my taste, so I don't think I'll be reading any more of her books. There was also a few odd comments about like telling someone they would go to the devil before something would happen, and I was just like, hold it here. Hold that. We do not need to be going nowhere like that. Oh my goodness. The main couple was really cute and the plot was cute, but there was just some details like that I ended up giving it 2 stars. Another short story I read was When There's a Tomorrow by Karyne Norton. I gave this one 3 stars. It's fantasy and feels like a fairy tale retelling, but it's not a fairy tale retelling. There is magic content. This was only like 48 pages, so it feels very silly to add it to this video, to add it to my Goodreads challenge, but the ending of this book demands me to do it because I needed more. It ends where everything gets good, and I needed to know what happens, and from what I can tell, the author does not plan to write anything else. And that's not right. Like, what? I need answers. I need happiness. Like, I need to know. Like, I felt like I just got conned with this book. Like, it had me so intrigued and what was happening. And let me just read like what this book was about, and I'll continue a bit on my thoughts. But it's Roman can't help falling for the girl next door. Sold. Right there. I'm sold. Yes. Even though she forgets who he is. Every single day. He'll stop at nothing to figure out the cause of her memory loss if it means there's a chance she might fall for him. How was I not supposed to fall for that kind of concept of a book? So, yes, very intrigued by it. However, that ending, Where's the rest of it? I will give a note, it was a wee bit much at one part with the romance, with a really long kiss. But that's just my taste. So like other than that and the ending, I really enjoyed the book. So 3 stars. But yes, I would like the rest of the book. And like what happens. I really want to know what happens. And then we have Princess Without a Palace by Kristen Niedfeldt. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is the author that wrote The Mystery of the Midnight Ball, which came, I think, multiple years after this one. And I definitely enjoyed that one more. I gave it a solid 4 stars. This one was about a 3.5. It is a King Thrushbeard retelling though, and like I've said before, that's not really my favorite retelling because the main girl is always kind of a brat. And with the main girl in this one, she's rude, but it's because she knows what she wants and what she doesn't want. And so she deserves what's fixing to come to her when her dad just like has enough and decides she's going to marry the first man that walks through the door. And I don't know, there was a lot of different parts about this book. I didn't really love the main couple together, but they were fine, I guess. I honestly don't remember too much about this one. It is a very kind of standard King Thrushbeard retelling, but there is some unique elements as well. I gave it 3.5. I would have given it 4 had certain things happened that I talk about in my review. But overall, I would get a copy of it. The next book is actually, though, kind of the sister of the main guy. And this book, it's her story, and I did not like her. So I'm making myself read that one this month, most likely, because I need character development stat for her. But yeah, it was good. I definitely like the Cinderella retelling better, though, by this author. Okay, 2 side notes on The Princess Without a Palace. Number 1, no magic. Really cool. So far, 2 out of 2 of the books I've read by this author have been no magic. I'm thinking maybe all of her books are, and that would be great because I want to find more non-magical fairy tale retellings to share with y'all. But then also, I love the cover of this book. Breaking news, I know, but I had to share. I really like the cover of this book. And just like all the author's book covers for her fairy tale retellings are very pretty. That means nothing, I know, but I had to share it. Then moving on to a secular middle grade book, a middle grade-ish, I guess you could say. That would be Secrets on the Shore by Katherine Woodfine. This is actually on my fall TBR, and I already knocked it off on the last day of the month. And so I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is part of the Sinclair Mystery series and then the Taylor and Rose Secret Agents series by Katherine Woodfine. This is kind of like the, well, okay, let me say. This is a bonus book, and it released in between books 2 and 3 in the second series, but because of the cliffhangers in that series, I totally ignored this book existed. And technically, the print edition comes out here in the US in November. It's already available in the UK at the beginning of the year, but we have the ebook edition, so I just read the ebook edition, and I'll get a physical copy when it releases here stateside. There's 2 short stories in this little collection, and it's like 200 pages. It's not a big collection by any stretch of the imagination. But the first one is set in between the series and is like a really good in-between novella. And then the second one is set shortly after the first book in the first series, and it's just Lil telling the story. And I liked that one a little less. It was very kind of obvious, in my opinion, what the culprit was on that one. But overall, not bad. 3.5 stars. Nothing more to really say about that. Well, okay, I do have one more thing to say. I don't think it's really necessary to read this book. If you're like a major fan of the series, you might enjoy it, see the characters again, but it's not like any groundbreaking, earth-shattering stuff, in my opinion. And then I have 3 books in the same series, and I gave them all very different ratings, but I have them organized by series order, so that's what we're going to do. So first one, which is technically the 3rd book in the series, would be Saving Marilee by Annette K. Larson. Book 1 was Just Ella, book 2 was Missing Lily. Greatly enjoyed those 2 books. This one I gave 3.5 stars. It follows one of their sisters, and I was really hesitant about reading this book because it does deal with the main girl in this one. Her husband was very abusive and manipulative and threatening, gaslighting, all of that. And I really didn't know about reading that kind of thing. But I think the author wrote it very well and in such a sensitive way, I guess would be the best way to put it. And so we don't really see that on page except for flashbacks, because the book starts and she's looking at his dead body because he was killed. Wasn't a great guy. Nobody's mourning his death, but there is a lot of her having to break free of his hold on her, I guess would be the best way to say it. Overall, I guess you could say I enjoyed this book. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's always hard for me though to say that I enjoyed a book when it has to do with such a serious topic like that. I don't know, like, it was difficult in that way. And I was a little concerned going into it also that, like, we're going to have, like, a married woman as the main character, so, like, sexual references wise. But it was very clean in that regard, so I greatly appreciate that from the author. And there is some tension between Marilee and this other guy, but it's still very little on, like, Marilee and her late husband's romance, which wouldn't make sense for a lot of the reasons. The next book was Painting Rain by Annette K. Larson. I gave this one 3 stars. I actually enjoyed this one's plot more than the prior book, but there was a lot of kissing and sexual tension between her and her guy that made me lower the rating a bit, unfortunately, even though I did really like the rest of the plot and like how things happened. I really enjoyed it, but this is actually following Lorania, and she is kind of the sister we meet in the first book and second book, and she's really snobby. And at the end of the second book, we learn a little bit more about her and what's going on, like, in her life compared to her sister's lives. And so I've been looking forward to reading her story eventually and reading this one. But because of her being in a very toxic relationship prior to this book, and like seeing the effects of that man's hold on her and how unhealthy they were for each other, there is almost, I would say, like a trigger warning for just like an unhealthy toxic relationship as well, because we get a lot of flashbacks in that. So I would give a heads up for that as well. Plot-wise, I actually did really enjoy seeing the art side of her and like all the art details and the romance with her actual guy in this book. But I will say I had to give it a lower rating because there's a lot of sexual tension between the two of them and quite a bit of like kissing, like a lot of kissing. And even like the forced proximity trope comes in very hard in this book. And so that adds in those elements as well, which I don't personally love, so I did lower my rating for that. I will say this series, though, this author, she knows how to write angst. And if you read these books, just like start bracing for impact about like 65% on Kindle, because 10% later you're going to be in the throes of angst. The title of this series is The Books of Dalithiya, I'm not sure how we say it. I would like to do a petition that it be renamed Angst of Dalithiya, because the angst in this series is pretty unmatched, I will say. Like, I stayed up so late reading all 5 of these books because I was just like gripped. I was just so sucked in and pulled in. So, and then we have the 5th book of this series, which is Keeping Kinley, and it's book 5, but because it doesn't follow one of the main sisters, I feel like it was kind of a bonus book in a way. It follows Ella's guy's younger sister, and like prior to them, during them, and then now after the events in Just Ella. And so Kinley is a little dramatic for my taste, but because of family situations, she had to go get a job at this manor house and, like, you know, be a maid. And she becomes friends with the manor's lord's second son. And he's so sweet. He is like a golden retriever, male main character, just precious. I wish so bad we could have gotten his POV, because this whole series, they are only told in the POVs of the main girls. And I would have loved to have his POV, especially because the end has some conflict, of course, and it would have been nice to have his POV to know what in the world he was doing, because I was stressing with her. But overall, very fun series. I wish we could have seen more of Ella and her sisters in this final book, because, you know, it's the final book and they were the main characters of all the prior books. But we see them a bit and we hear about them, so I guess I'm satisfied overall. There is a prequel story for the series I haven't read yet, and that's on the author's newsletter that I want to read. There is also a spin-off series that this author has done that are fairy tale retellings, so I'm going to start reading those. And then there is also like an extra bonus book connected to this first series that is part of a multi-authored series. I'll put the cover up. I don't remember. It's a Frog Prince retelling, and that's more connected to this series, so I still have to read those. I'm going to try to read those 2 bonus books here in September, but overall I enjoyed them. I plan to get physical copies. Another clean fiction book I read in the month of August was To Charm a Lady by Joanna Barker. This is book 2 in the Cartwheels series. Book 1 was A Game of Hearts, which y'all have heard me rave about. I really enjoyed that one. The banter, even the enemies to more, which is usually not a trope I like. I really liked how it worked in that book, and their banter and just the competition vibe was so fun. This book though follows the main girl in that one, her best friend Cora. And Cora has loved the main girl from book 1's brother for a very long time, but has decided that she is going to get over him because he is very much like that bad boy player kind of guy and like always breaking girls' hearts and whatnot. So she's decided she's going to finally get over him and go to a house party. And of course he appears at said house party. He was not originally going to be there, but he ends up being there, and now she's just like, I don't know what to do. And so as a general rule, I don't really like the bad boy, reformed bad boy trope, but how it worked in this book, I think the author did it really well, because there was a catalyst for the main guy Oliver to realize he doesn't want to be that way anymore, and it wasn't because of a girl. It was like his own personal reflection that he needs to change, something needs to change. And I appreciated how the author did that. I will give a note though that this author just seemed to write a little bit more romance than I personally preferred, just like in the first book. This one had longer kisses and just like more romance in general than I personally prefer to read about. So I do give a heads up for that for both of those books, even though I really liked the first one. It wasn't quite a 5-star because of all the kisses for me. And in this one, there is a couple scenes that I talk about in my review that have a little bit more of like a tension, I guess you could say, and like her kind of oogling him at one point. And so it was different. I definitely liked the first book more, but I did really like the couple in this book and how Oliver saw he needed to change, and he wanted to prove himself not only to the main girl, but also to his family and to himself. So I really liked the character development in this one. I look forward to reading whoever's story is next. I assume it's going to be one of the twins, because we had Marigold and now her brother Oliver, and then they have 2 twins, a boy and a girl, so I assume their stories will be next, and I'll definitely be reading those. My next book was a random fairy tale retelling I happened across on Amazon, and that was Ella by Jessalyn Stewart Peasley, I think is the author's name. And I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It's clean fiction, but there's very light kind of Christian threads to it. And then it is also non-magical, which was really nice. This one, though, was Cinderella in a really unique way, because in a lot of retellings, Ella can come across as like a pushover or like weak and spineless, like, you know, all the insults I see Cinderella get, because like she won't stand up to her stepmother particularly. But in this book, the author wrote Ella so well that yes, she did promise her father that she was going to take care of the rest of them when he passed, so like, you know, the stepmother and the stepsisters, but she also had such a pride in caring for her home, and just she really had a servant's heart. Like her love language was 100% acts of service, and I think the author wrote that so realistically and so believable, because that felt like Cinderella to me. Oftentimes we have Cinderellas who like grumble under their breath or dream about rebelling, and that's like not my favorite Cinderella to read about. The Cinderellas that still take care of their stepfamilies no matter what they've been through is very inspiring to me, and that gives it more to me of that not necessarily true love, but the showing love to your enemies, you know? And I really loved how this author did that. I will say though, this book is pretty heavy on the grief, because our main girl is very much still grieving her father, and I definitely cried. I would say this is probably the first fairy tale retelling that has made me cry. And all of my fairy tale retellings I've read, this is definitely the first one that's made me cry because of so many parts of her grief I could just relate to. But I will also give the trigger warning for that, but also things like the abuse that Ella goes through. Like, she's whipped and kind of smacked with a switch by her stepmother. There's also a death, the death of an animal for food, and also the mention of the death of an infant. So I just want to give a heads up, this is not a light, fluffy fairy tale retelling, but I really enjoyed it still because Ella was such a strong, self-reliant character that really showed the acts of service, and I just really loved her servant's heart. She was so sensitive and compassionate towards others and just so kind and caring at the same time that she really reminded me a lot of the 2015 live-action Cinderella in that way. She was just a wonderful Cinderella. The author wrote her so well, and also how she had to do everything herself in the sense of like the dress and the shoes and the ball part. She had to do everything. There was no magic to help her. She was sincerely self-reliant on herself, and it was a refreshing difference. It really was. It is not a light, fluffy read by any means because of the grief, but it was still really good. It was still good. There is 2 extra books connected to this book by this author. One of them is the stepmother's story. I don't think I'm going to read that one because I know how it goes. So I don't think I'm going to read that one personally. But then there is also her love interest, Ella's love interest's perspective on all the events. I might read that one, but it's not on Kindle. So it's not really our priority. I think you could read this one just fine without them. And then my last book for this video, I've been filming this video I think for 2 hours now. I hope this video will be easy enough to edit. But my last book, we're going to finish this off with a bang, and that is Legacy of Thorns by Melanie Sellier. I gave this one very easily 4 stars. This is Daphne's story, and in the first book we meet Daphne because she is the main character of that book's best friend. So this is her book. And then okay, in this world though, this is the Kingdoms of Legacy, and basically you have 6 kingdoms on this continent, and they all have a tie to a fairy tale, but it's their actual history. So, you know, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, this one's Sleeping Beauty, and each of the kingdoms, there's going to be 6 books in this series, and we have to wait over a year for the next one. I'm not excited about that at all. But anyway, in the series, we have what's called the Legacy, which is basically the echoes or the remains of the original enchantment from that story is like seeped into the land and is constantly trying to recreate those events from that original story. So like in the Beauty and the Beast first book, Legacy of Roses, every flower that blooms in that kingdom is a rose. Beasts are protected in the forest because, you know, Beauty and the Beast. In the second book, Legacy of Glass, that is the Cinderella kingdom. The glass work they make is absolutely amazing. Everyone's always losing a shoe. You've got mice as big as horses. You've got enormous pumpkins everywhere. In this third book, in Sleeping Beauty, they are known for their sleeping draughts and medicines and like the spindles, like that. If other people poke their finger on them, they'll get the best nap of their life. Very creative series. That's all I'm saying here. Very, very creative series. And it has been so much fun. I have greatly enjoyed them. Now, here's the thing though. If you leave your birth kingdom, there's a side effect. You're either like in pain or you're drowsy all the time. Like everybody is different, but there's a side effect. And so Daphne's parents are originally from the Beauty and the Beast kingdom, but they had like a wanderlust, so they traveled and went to the Sleeping Beauty kingdom and had her, but decided eventually they had to go back to the Beauty and the Beast kingdom. And so she has always felt the effects of that, and so Daphne is known for like sleeping at the drop of a hat, and that's her side effect. So she is really looking forward to finally going to her birth kingdom that she really doesn't know, but trying to figure out who she is without constantly falling asleep all the time. But she ends up meeting the main guy, Finley, and Finley has ulterior motives and getting her to help him, and certain things involve. I don't want to give you any more. I feel like the back cover, it could tell. I don't want to tell you anymore though. You could read the back cover. I don't want to tell you anymore. I feel like I'll spoil it if I give you too much. But this one was very entertaining, very fun. I just love this series. I will say I didn't really connect to the main guy much, but I love Daphne, so that was fine. We also get to see Avery and Elliot from the book 1.5 in this series, which is Tides of Legacy, which I really, really liked that one. We get to see them again in this book, and that was so much fun. And of course, we get to see Rosalie and Dimitri from the first book again, and I just love seeing prior characters. And this author writes such a good fairy tale retelling. It was so fun, so enjoyable. I can't wait for the next book, but I'm going to have to over a year out, according to her newsletter. I'm in pain, so. But really fun series, been very enjoyable, very creative. I probably now, within this year, I'm going to have to read other Melanie Sellier non-fairy tale retelling books, just so I can, like, have my bingeable content. Because, like, literally, I was so excited for this book. I wore my pink shirt, I had my pink mug, I was ready, and I just, like, read this on a Saturday. I was so happy. It was lovely, and then I finished the book, and now I'm sad I have to wait. Story of a reader's life. And so with that, that is the end of this video. Here is the stack of the books I'll be keeping. I'm not going to keep Sky 7 Colors or the Rise of the Y, but here are those. I definitely have a few I want to see about getting eventually, but I'm trying to be good and not spend money. I'm trying. It's a battle every day, but I'm trying, okay? So here's my stack of books. I hope you enjoyed this video. And I will see y'all next time. I don't remember what next week's video is, so we'll find out together. And I will see y'all then, though. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to know if you've read any of these. Do you want to read any of them? If you've added any to your TBR. Like, if you need a summer YA read, Riley and Sam was so good. It was so good. And you could read it not during the summer. Like, it's okay, but, like, it's perfect summer vibes. But anyway, that is the end of this video. I hope you found a few new books to add to your TBR, and I will see y'all next time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have an absolutely lovely rest of your day. I am Lindsay from the blog booksforchristiangirls.blogspot.com, where there is a new review every Wednesday and Friday. I try to post a new video on this channel every Friday as well. And then, let's see, I am on Instagram under Books for Christian Girls, where I only talk about Christian books for girls ages 9 to 19. I also have my personal Bookstagram, which is Book Reviews by Lindsay, which is kind of clean fiction, Christian fiction, just what I'm reading, my random book conversations on there. It's just kind of fun and random, and I enjoy it. And then, let's see, I am also on TikTok and Goodreads and Facebook. And that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!